So we are here at the European Climate Change Adaptation Conference. I'm talking to Sam Longman, who is Head of Sustainability and Corporate Environment at Transport for London. Sam, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So first off, I wanted to know, what are the major threats posed by climate change to the London transport network, and how does that affect travellers?
Sure. So the threats we're seeing and experiencing now, and will get worse into the future, similar to most people actually. It's precipitation, too much, too little, and then extreme heat. So that's destabilising some of our assets and operations, degrading the life, impacting customers and staff as well. And it's not just those extreme events, although we are experiencing that more frequently. It's the underlying trends and the need to understand how do our assets and operations and our staff perform, and what do they need under these changing climate conditions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously the London transport network is, a lot of it is quite old, isn't it? So
yeah, a mix of very old, 160 years. Deep tube network. For example, the clay around our deep tube network is actually heated up by 14 degrees over its lifetime. So it was basically acting as a heat sink. So we've already got that challenge in terms of cooling the tube, limited space. But then we've got brand new infrastructure such as the Elizabeth line, where you have the luxury of being able to put in the vent shafts and have air-conditioned trains. We're buying new rolling stock and trying to get air conditioning where we can, but the challenge is, where does that heat then go? Does it go into the tunnels themselves and then heat up the platforms? But we don't just run the rail services as well. We run the buses, we run the major roads in London, as well as a big landowner, biggest landowner, one of the biggest in London, 2,000 hectares. And actually a third of that is green infrastructure. It's plants and vegetation. And it's how do we manage that under a changing climate, but also how do we leverage it to help adapt and improve resilience in terms of cooling and stabilisation of some of our earthworks and stuff. So there's lots of risks and challenges, but also opportunities.
Yeah. So since we've mentioned challenges, what are some of the other challenges? You've talked about, the age of the clay on some of the older lines. What else are you trying to deal with?
The biggest challenge we're facing is knowing specifically how our assets and operations are being impacted. Obviously, we do have data on that to some extent, and we do experience incidents. What we're trying to do is put in place processes, upgrade our systems so we can be more methodical in collecting that insight. Because only once we've got that richness of data can we build the tools to inform decision makers in the day-to-day. Like many, we don't have the luxury of large budgets to throw at this. So really, and like most sustainability, you need to deliver as part of BAU. Sustainability is more about how you do things than what you do. And so that's about upskilling your staff, giving them the tools so that when they are designing their projects, when they're putting together business cases, when they're developing the programs, when you're going through your business planning cycle, people are able to, in a quantified way, make decisions about what they allocate for certain types of interventions, because you are competing against very constrained budgets and multiple outcomes you're trying to deliver, such as operational performance, customer growth, safety, well-being. They're complex outcomes that we're trying to balance against for the improvement of the health and well-being of Londoners and our staff.
Okay. So it's interesting that you mentioned budgeting, because I heard you say in the session there that you actually, climate budgeting is integrated.
Yeah.
What are the other sort of tools, strategies, initiatives that you're using to tackle the challenges of climate change?
Yeah, well, we've published an adaptation plan, and as I've kind of touched on, I think the key things are about governance, integrating it into all of your kind of key governance processes. It's about knowledge and training. So we've got a dedicated training program, carbon literacy, which you may be aware of. So we've trained over 6,000 staff now, one of the most trained in the world for a single organisation, which does include adaptation. But actually off the back of that, we're doing dedicated adaptation and green infrastructure training, following a similar model of train the trainer. So these are, people from around the business that we train up to then train their colleagues. And the benefit of that approach is, because it's in person as well, you're getting these mix of people in a room together. So people are starting to make new connections, more appreciation. And then there's the kind of harder stuff in terms of the kind of data we're gathering about where things like sustainable drainage should go, the hydrological modelling. increasing understanding of how heat's impacting our systems and our services, but trying to upgrade those systems so we're harvesting that data all the time. Like most big organizations, there's a lot of performance metrics that we obsess over. And what we need to do is show the correlation so that we can start to see how changing climate and extreme events impact those performance metrics we already care about. And quite often that you can then monetize, not just in economic terms, but in financial terms. And that's, I think, where we'll get the key breakthrough. We need to be able to show this is not just about risk management, and it's not just about those economic outcomes that we all need. It's also can be invest to save. Some of it is going to be expensive, but some of it, can be cost neutral or can be cost beneficial. And it's how you develop the insight to work out what those interventions are and make the case in a quantified way.
Yeah, it's investing for the future, isn't it, essentially? All right, so obviously adapting to climate change, becoming more resilient, that's one side of things. The other side is the environmental impact, the emissions that some network as big as that generates. What are you doing?
I always think decarbonisation is the easy bit.
Okay,
because
I'm glad to hear you say that.
Adaptation, is 2 decades at least behind, but mitigation. But we're seeing it catching up. I mean, it's easier because we have developed ways of measuring it, and we've got a kind of defined goal, net zero. And I don't think we'll ever get a clear goal around adaptation. But having said that, it's still vitally important that we do decarbonise. And it's not just about playing our part to tackle the global climate challenge. It's also, there's quite often a correlation between cost savings and decarbonisation. Essentially, less carbon means you're using less materials, less energy. And we've developed in-house tools now to draw that out in the projects that we do. There's the obsolescence risk as well when it comes to mitigation. Technology is changing all the time, and old fossil fuel technology is being phased out. How do you stay ahead of that curve? And then there's multiple benefits you get from decarbonising. Certainly when you're talking about emissions that are emitted at source, you're improving air quality, for example. So Transport for London, we've got a very mature approach, I would argue. We've just announced our science-based targets, and that extends to our supply chain for the first time. We've got a very strong handle on our operational emissions in terms of our electricity, and our buses are our main sources. We are the biggest user of electricity in London and one of the biggest in the UK, 1.6 terawatt hours a year. And we've got the amount of buses in London is twice the rest of the UK. And we're recently announced our 2000th electric bus, and we're aiming for 100% electric buses, or zero emission certainly. So we've got a few hydrogen by 2034 at the latest, but hoping to bring that forward to 2030. So there are two biggest sources. The buses, that requires a lot of capital, so that's not without its challenges, as well as upgrading the charging infrastructure to go with it. In terms of electricity, we've got a well-developed energy purchasing strategy, and we're at the advanced stages of signing our first power purchase agreement, which hopefully will be announced soon. And we've got a strategy to get to 70% of our electricity sourced from power purchase agreements, another 5% from solar private wire. So we're in a market exercise at the moment to bring on board a supplier and a framework, a single supplier and a framework, to basically go out and find land on our own estate or nearby and provide that electricity directly to us. And that actually is cost beneficial for both sides, because you avoid the grid costs in terms of kind of on costs that you associate with that. So they can get a higher price for the electricity they sell for us. We can get the electricity cheaper. And we estimate we can take on board about 64 megawatts through that solar private wire agreement. Bearing in mind, we've got our own private high voltage power network with 8 bulk supply points. So a great opportunity there. And the rest of it we'll do through flexible tariffs. But as I say, it's more about how you do things. So driving energy efficiency in everything that you do, and modelling carbon throughout the whole of a project life cycle. This is a never-ending task. Even when you're on 100% renewables, you're still paying for the stuff. So you want to try and drive it down, and that's a big part of the the kind of education, culture, training program that we're driving through at Transport for London.
All right, fascinating. I imagine you're not doing all of this alone, are you? You collaborating with anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, collaboration is key for adaptation, mitigation, and the whole shooting match. I mean, I think my starting point when I think about collaboration is these are not siloed challenges. There is one challenge, and that is the race towards sustainability, which of course never ends. It's just about getting better all the time. And you're dealing with these multiple outcomes. And, we will not deal with climate change unless we have a fairer, more inclusive society. No, if we improve health and well-being, unless there's prosperity, unless we regenerate nature, for example. So taking that integrated approach, you're joining up with your kind of health colleagues within your organisation across the sectors, with other colleagues that are dealing with challenges that, interface with your assets and operations, because these impacts don't stop at the boundaries. And also we're part of value chains that extend globally, and we need to make sure we are understanding those interdependencies and working together in order to minimize and reduce risk. So I do think it's key. I spoke earlier about the innovation we've done around surface water, where unfortunately there is no clear accountability when it comes to surface water flooding, because there's so many multiple agencies. So we recently published in London a surface water strategy where, through a couple of years' work and a lot of kind of modelling, worked out what the water does so that we can design collaborative interventions together to tackle that problem, rather than each of us worrying about our own plot of land or our own kind of administrative boundary. So it's kind of endless opportunity and never-ending work to collaborate and go further.
Yeah, I can imagine. Let's say, what would it take, if you had a fairy godmother wave a wand and give you everything you need to get from where you are now to where you want to be? What would be on your bucket list? More money, better policies?
I think where we are making progress and where more progress needs to be made and where everyone can help is about education. It's educating our organisations, our governments and the public about the positive future we're trying to build. The issue I think we've got is this is seen as a burden. It's negative. Oh, there's this bad thing happening. And if we could just deal with this bad thing, and by the way, it might be quite expensive, we can get back to the good old days. We're never going back to the good old days. Right. Like, the world is changing before our eyes all the time. Let's be deliberative about the positive future we're running towards, which is a future which is nature rich, where people have fulfilled, healthy, enjoyable, safe lives. That's ultimately what we're trying to do, and that is never ending. And I think that all of this becomes too entrenched in the political debate, in misinformation, and people feeling like they're having something taken away from them. Mm-hmm. But actually, what you find is there's a lot of quiet support out there. The issue is people don't speak up when something's positive; they don't speak up when something's negative. Absolutely. The second issue is key decision makers don't always have the confidence. And we need to give people the confidence to say, I don't actually know what the answer is, but I think this is important. Mm-hmm. So make it part of the conversation. I find sometimes decision makers don't want to talk about something if they don't feel they're informed enough to talk about it. And we need to be brave. And if it isn't part of the conversation, we're not going to build those foundation improvements and mature together. So I think what we need is for everyone to get behind the conversation, speak up, talk about the positivity, accept that we don't know anything, but this is the enjoyment of this whole field, is the learning and the growing together.
Yeah, I think it's very, very difficult with such a rapidly changing situation like climate change for anybody to feel like they're a total expert. All right, so that's a very positive message. I'd like to end with asking you if there are any more sort of positives, any success stories so far, or any learnings that other transport networks could benefit from.
I'll talk in general terms again rather than giving specifics. I think it is difficult working in this space because we know that not enough is happening. It's not happening quickly enough. We know we are seeing a reversal in life outcomes in many parts of the world. And we know that we are seeing it becoming a very divisive discussion. But when I step back and I look around, what I actually see is those foundational improvements, those people working in lots of different organisations, increasingly starting to work on this and starting to network and starting to talk. And that, for me, is where I see real progress being made. And actually, when it moves on from being the hyperbole and the need to have a big vision that you try to sell to people are just getting on with it. Actually, maybe that's the point when we've won. When this is just part of the day job now.
Yeah, it just happens.
And that's what I'm starting to see happen. And I think financial disclosures is a shining example of that. It is about that change curve that you need to go through. You know, first you need your pioneers, then you start to network those pioneers together. You know, someone came up with the idea that we need to think about climate change as part of finance in the first place. But once you start to network together, it becomes a community of practice. And now it is starting to become legislation. Just the system is changing before our eyes. We've seen that in the financial disclosure space. You know, we now have legal requirements in how we report. And let's take that kind of system change journey against all of these kind of multiple faceted parts of this challenge that we're dealing with. And that's when I think we'll see real progress. And we are seeing real progress, in my opinion.
Okay, good. I'm very glad to hear you say that. So we've covered quite a lot here. Is there anything else that you would like to share with people? Any key messages or any takeaways?
No, I thank you very much for the time. I very much enjoyed the conversation. I've really enjoyed the conversation. You know, I like most of us, I don't just work on adaptation, but it is a real passion of mine. And to learn about this conference and come to it and find other people, it's that emotional support I think is really important because it is a challenging field to be in.
Yes, yeah, we're only humans, aren't we? And it can get heavy.
Yes.
All right, Longman, Transport for London, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.